Inhalamos esperanza, exhalamos dudas. We breathe in hope, breathe out doubt. Perfectamente imperfecta, lentamente encontrando autenticidad y conexión con la madre tierra y las raíces que emergen de las semillas plantadas por mis ancestros. Perfectly imperfect, slowly finding authenticity and connection with Mother Earth and the roots that emerge from the seeds planted by our ancestors. Growing up, I was often afraid to speak up and share my emotions, concerned by external expectations and a constant need to act as a perfect, sweet, and calm Latina who always had to be okay. I was considered shy and reserved, but rarely anyone took the time to listen. As a girl, I was also labeled as a model student because I would get good grades and listen to the adults in my life. What no one knew was I would often hide the stomach aches and sweaty hands produced by an anxiety that I could not comprehend. Tú solo di que sí. I was taught to always say yes, regardless of my opinion or well-being. I always had to agree with what was said. I recall being called dramática and internalizing that my problems were not that important because of my age. As long as I did well in school and did not bring attention to my personal problems, I could pretend to be the perfect daughter, sister, and student. In elementary school, I was introduced to spoken word poetry, and for the first time in my life, I found a safe place where I could express my views and opinions. I could not share my challenges at home, but I could always write them down in a journal that did not undermine my feelings based on age or experiences. I can now understand that the adults in my life did not support me because of personal decision, but rather a lack of understanding on how mental health challenges manifested in a young girl. The National Alliance on Mental Illness reports that many adults in the Hispanic or Latin American communities do not talk openly about mental health because it is still considered taboo or out of fear of bringing unwanted attention or shame to their families. In adolescence, my life was an uphill battle where anxiety and depressive symptoms started becoming impediments to a normal life. I developed an eating disorder that controlled my everyday thoughts until one day it was unmanageable. At 15, I asked my family for help. Beyond a search for physical appearance influenced by gender norms and media, this eating disorder became an unhealthy coping mechanism for my emotional dysregulation. Being silent was no longer an option. At this time, I was still living in my hometown, the border city of Juarez, Mexico, and it was my first time going to the doctor for mental health. I can still remember feeling shame with a constant reminder from the adults in my life that my problems were not that bad. As I told the doctor about my anxiety and obsessive thoughts, he told me to get distracted. Pasa tiempo con amigas y diviértete. Spend time with friends and have fun. I was faced, once again, with a dismissive response from an adult, and this time, the healthcare system. However, these issues do not occur solely in our home countries. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, Latino youth in the U.S. have pressing mental health needs and are not receiving appropriate care. Factors including discrimination, migration experiences, and exposure to traumatic events are contributing to these conditions. As I moved to the United States to become a bilingual educator almost a decade ago, I started recognizing similar struggles among my Latina students. But first, as a teenager, I learned to be strong like my abuela, since she always had to face challenges alone. Growing up in a city with high rates of gender-based violence and globally known for its femicides, instilled a fear in me that I'm still processing to this day. I learned to remain silent as a survival mechanism. As machismo remains an oppressive factor in our upbringing, I internalized that my role as a woman was to agree and smile. Calladita te ves más bonita. You look prettier when you're quiet. A common phrase used in our communities to remind us as women that appearances are more important than staying true to ourselves and our needs. Conversations around mental health in the Latin American community are permeated by social stigma, shame, and guilt share across generations.
It is not our ancestors' fault, but rather mere survival in a society that hinders opportunities to open up in ways that feel right to us. According to research published by the American Psychiatric Association Journal in 2017, Latinos in the US do not access mental health services due to cultural and socioeconomic barriers, including lack of knowledge about the topic, language, and lack of culturally competent mental health professionals. So, as I moved to the US to become a bilingual educator almost a decade ago, I recognized those struggles among my Latina students. In the classroom, they would often hide their emotions in fear of getting in trouble or being perceived as an inconvenience. In teacher meetings, I would be encouraged to talk about their emotional needs, but during parent-teacher conferences, parents would often value hard work over their children's well-being. I became passionate about finding ways to help them, since the existing school support did not respond to their unique needs. This realization even led me to obtain a certification in mindfulness instruction to learn about evidence-based strategies to support their well-being. However, as I learned about concepts such as social-emotional learning and mindfulness, I realized how these practices had long existed in our communities, but were no longer recognized as legitimate. Why did we ever stop listening to ancestral knowledge? In Latin America, colonialism imposed a set of beliefs and practices, forcing our ancestors to let go of their traditions to survive. As immigrants, we're also impacted by systemic oppression, where we have to let go of our roots and who we are in order to survive. Now, how can we approach mental health challenges among Latin American communities? My first recommendation is to provide culturally responsive support. Besides teaching skills to identify and regulate emotions, I recognize the value in affirming my students' intersecting identities while fostering a psychologically safe space for conversation and collective growth. Our indigenous communities celebrated oral storytelling and mindful connection, and we can too. I also encourage us to find and follow practices that work for us. Mindfulness practices aligned with my personal interests, including meditation and mindful movement, allow me to reconnect with my body through self-love. Attending sessions with a Latina therapist who speaks my language and understands my needs changed my life. Connecting with Mother Earth was also a way to stay true to my indigenous roots in a way that felt right. My second recommendation is to find a community and engage in open conversation. We do not have to navigate this path alone. Conversations with my students and family members served as lessons that there is strength in our comunidad. I invite you to reflect on how we can foster loving conversations where we respect each other's point of view while also advocating for our well-being. Conversations with my mother and family members were not simple, but necessary. Mami, te amo y te respeto, pero necesito que me escuches. I love and respect you, but I need you to listen. We might come from different generations, but we share a common goal: heal our family's intergenerational trauma and foster intergenerational joy. My final recommendation has been the most influential and challenging component of my personal journey: practice self-compassion. When indigenous artisans weave a huipil like the one I'm proud to wear today, they patiently embrace the mistakes and imperfections by weaving threads and forming new shapes with a loving reminder of a visual history that connects us all. Self-compassion, how? How can we approach mental health from a place of self-compassion, mutual understanding, and imperfect realities? Mental health is not supposed to be linear. As a girl and adolescent, I navigated challenges without understanding the root. I hid my emotions, thinking that there were weaknesses, when in reality, learning to understand where they came from became a source of strength. As an adult, I can look back and understand that my emotions were valid. Therapy and appropriate mental health support gave me hope. Now I know I cannot control everything that happens to me, but I have the power to choose how to respond. Our communities can be spaces of authentic learning, where we can redefine mental health journeys by addressing social stigmas and unlearning preconceived ideas through self-compassion and loving action. We are perfectly imperfect. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much.